All right, so get ready, because today we're doing a deep dive into something we all know, but maybe, haven't thought about too deeply, cashiers.
Yeah, it's funny how those everyday things, they can actually be full of surprises when you really look into them.
Exactly. You guys sent in a ton of stuff from RoleCatcher, right? Their career guides, tips for nailing interviews, like seriously, the whole shebang. And honestly, I was kind of blown away. Like, did you know cashier jobs are actually predicted to stay pretty steady, even with all this automation going on? You know, robots taking over, but somehow not the register.
It is kind of weird, right? It's like, yeah, we've got self-checkout popping up everywhere you look these days, but here's the thing. Needing awesome customer service, that hasn't gone anywhere. In fact, I'd argue it's even more important now.
Because when everything screens and you're doing it all yourself, suddenly that cashier, that's like the one human connection you get, right?
Totally. You become the face of the place, even if you're not the owner or anything.
Okay, that's a good point to remember. If this is a job you're actually thinking about your people skills, that's going to be key.
Hmm.
But hold on, speaking of unexpected things, I was going through the roll catcher guide, and they mentioned standing for long stretches and even sometimes lifting heavy stuff. I don't know about you, but when I picture cashier, that's not exactly the first thing that pops into my head.
Right, and that's where we got to broaden our idea of what a cashier even is these days. It goes way beyond just the retail store. Roll catcher, they give examples like restaurants where you might be handling those heavy trays or warehouses where you're moving stock around, even events needing someone to manage tickets, deal with crowds.
So suddenly it's not just standing at the register, it's like being in the thick of it.
Exactly. The more places you look, the more variety there is in these jobs.
All right.
And speaking of things that surprised me, get this. The guide says a whopping 66% of a cashier's job is customer service.
66.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's wild.
It really shows how much things have changed. It's not just about ringing up those purchases anymore. Often you're the first person a customer talks to. So what does that mean? You're solving problems, you're calming down those tense situations.
You're like part salesperson, part therapist, maybe even a little bit of a magician on the side.
Uh-huh. Pretty much. You're representing the whole brand, not just handling money.
Okay, but now for the part I think we all dread a little, the difficult customers. Come on, we've all been there, right? On a scale of 1 to full-blown apocalypse, some customer interactions are just the worst.
The absolute worst.
So how does RoleCatcher say cashiers get trained to handle that war zone? Give me the inside scoop.
Well, thankfully, they dive right into that in their FAQ section, which was a relief to see. And you know what? A lot of it's stuff we can all use, even outside of work. Staying calm, really listening to what the person's saying, even if they're being a jerk, and remembering it's probably not about you personally.
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is, but it's also knowing when to call in backup, right? Like when to get
Right.
a manager involved, all super valuable skills no matter what you end up doing in life.
You're telling me learning to keep your cool when everything's going haywire, that's got to be up there with like learning to do your taxes or something,
Mm-hmm.
essential life skill.
Yeah.
For real though, learning to stay calm when it feels like the world's ending, that's like a superpower.
Absolutely, a superpower everyone needs, right?
100%.
Yeah.
But okay, speaking of leveling up, RoleCatcher's Guide, it actually lays out this whole career path you can take, starting as like a trainee cashier
Yeah.
and working your way up to supervisor and beyond. What struck you about how those responsibilities change as you move up that ladder?
It's interesting, right? It's not just about like more work or whatever. It's the kind of responsibility that shifts. Like they've got this example, a guy named John started as a cashier. Now he's running inventory for this whole chain of stores. That's the kind of growth we're talking about.
See, that's what's so cool. You might start at the register, but those skills, they can take you places. And this is where RoleCatcher adds another awesome layer. They don't just break down the job. They've got this whole section on interview prep. Genius. Because let's be real, interviews are terrifying.
The worst.
So out of all the sample questions they give, what's one you think someone should be ready for no matter what kind of cashier job they're going for?
Ooh, that's a good one. They've got a ton, but the one that always gets me is, how would you handle it if a customer is arguing about a price? Sounds simple, but think about it.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
It's testing, like how you handle conflict if you know the store's rules and if you can keep that customer service face on even when things are heated.
Whoa, it's like a pop quiz on everything. And it makes
Hmm.
you realize a good cashier, they're not just reacting to stuff. They got to know the rules, the procedures, how to deal with those tricky situations.
Exactly. Thinking on your feet, balancing what the customer needs with what the company says. That's valuable no matter where you work.
Okay, so we've officially busted the myth of the easy cashier job, right? We've talked tech-changing things, how important customer service is, even how this can be a stepping stone to something bigger. But before we wrap up, we got to talk money.
The elephant in the room.
Right.
Hey.
Cashier jobs, they're not exactly known for those six-figure salaries.
True, true. And the RoleCatcher guide, they're upfront about that. But here's the thing. It's not the whole picture. Remember how we were talking about all the different places cashiers work?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Restaurants, warehouses, you really opened my eyes to that.
Right. So the pay, it can be really different depending on the industry, the city, even just the specific place you're at. Like high-end restaurant, you might be getting tips, which a regular retail cashier wouldn't. Or maybe you're in a specialized field, more room to negotiate, to move up, eventually making more money.
So it's not like instant riches, but it's more nuanced than people think. It's about knowing what you're worth, doing your research, maybe getting creative with how you even define cashier in the first place.
100%. And don't forget about those transferable skills we talked about. Even if you start as a cashier, that experience, dealing with customers, problem solving, handling the pressure, those are gold when you're going for higher paying jobs later on.
It's like you're not just earning a paycheck, you're leveling up your skill set, which, by the way, can open a lot of doors down the line.
No doubt about it.
Honestly, I'm kind of feeling inspired right now. I mean, I'm not saying we're all going to be CEOs just because we've mastered, like, the price check and bagging groceries.
Right. Uh-huh.
But, hey, crazier things have happened.
Exactly. And there's so much more to dig into on RoleCatcher, you know. It's like career guides galore. They've got those skill tests you can take, even interview practice, which honestly, pretty helpful.
Seriously. So if you're even a little bit curious about cashier stuff, or really any job, check them out after this. It's like having your own career coach, but, way less intense.
And for those of you who are already like thinking big picture, this whole deep dive, it kind of brings up a really interesting question. If tech's changing the cashier world so much, what does that mean for like customer service everywhere?
Oh, that's a good one. Like, are we all going to be talking to robots from now on? Or does being good with people, does that become even more important when everything else is techie?
Something to think about, right? What do you guys think?
Love ending on a question that makes you really think. But for real, whether you've worked to register or just, stood in line with a million questions for the cashier.
You've all been there.
Haha, exactly. I hope this gave you a whole new way to look at it.
Every job's got its hidden stuff, skills you don't expect, ways to move up you might not see right away.
Totally. And on that note, we want to hear from you guys. Hit us up on social media. Tell us your cashier stories, good, bad, those ones that are just like hilariously awkward.
Oh, there's some good ones out there.
I bet. We'll be here ready to dive into whatever you throw our way next. Until then, happy job hunting, everyone.